This talk is how to be nothing more than the plain definition minus any and all additives. It's like a cow. I know a lot about cows. Her name is Oak Maple Alley, and she brings forth good milk, frothy and thick. It tastes good because it is good. And instead of putting it in this plus that, how about we do not that? How about a cold glass of milk, just milk, nothing more? Also, bread to butter, so little time, but at least like the milk, the butter's homemade and made by Oak Maple Alley too. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. As always, I'm very, very happy to take questions at the conclusion of the talk if you have any to pose.
Are you going to use the microphone?
Yeah, I think I should. All right, everyone can hear me okay? That's good. That makes a difference. That's great. Okay. Labels are a conspicuous and serviceable part of everyday life. Strolling aimlessly through co-op aisles near twilight and summer, the streets outside calm, devoid of autumn's buzzing hive, the air devoid of even slight breezes, and nothing through those large panes but an indigo backdrop to an orange-tinted sunset viewed best from the old Moscow Pullman Highway. You yourself breezing along, dropping fruit into your handcart, fighting fruit flies flying towards the freezer section, where with one fell swoop, you can stop, slide open the frosted door, and pick up a container of organic mint chocolate chip ice cream for inspection. Precious label, what a treasure trove of secrets you divulge at first glance for information. Milk, but of course, chocolate chips too. But don't forget about the xanthan gum, the locust bean gum, the cane sugar, the cocoa butter, all of it churning your spoon and then your stomach, to the tune of 9 grams saturated fat, 35 milligrams of cholesterol, and 19 grams of sugar. And that's just per suggested serving size. But who can follow such a puritanical imposition? Labels, what technology? And right there in the palm of your hand. You love this stuff, the ice cream, but not even the 69 milligrams of calcium or the 97 milligrams of potassium or the 3 grams of protein are enough to move the container from the freezer to the checkout line. You put it back. Then a couple in matching Eli and Charlotte's Dairy Farm t-shirts walk past you. Maybe they'll take the ice cream. Then you put your mask back up over your nose and mouth because one of the co-op employees glares at you like you just backed over his pet with a bulldozer after first strapping said pet with a plastic explosive, the explosive exploding as the pet was crushed like plastic. Okay, dude. Oh, got it. Chill, it's back on. See, the mask is like a label too. It says without a spoken word that you, actually, never mind. What is on my mind is another label, a name tag. Yeah, name tags are labels too. But the very reprimanding part he was wearing, which left me perplexed. It read, R. Bipples, J. Paint Portfolio. Should people like this be giving advice about anything? Well, we like labels. We make use of labels all the time. How else would you know that athlete's foot cream removes itching, burning, crackling, scaling, and discomfort, if not for labels? How else would you know that 100% sodium bicarbonate, also known as baking soda, not to be confused with hardy partying frat bro Michael Sedaris, aka baked soda, can be dissolved 1 or 2 cups into a warm bath for a 30-minute soak if not for labels? And how, I ask you, would you be aware of football coach, now second-time HIPPO lecture subject Mike Leach, and his most memorable quotes without the search engine label telling you you're in the right place to type and find? I think the most important thing is confidence, he once opined. A lot of people think they're confident, but if you think about it, they're not. If you get into a fight, don't take your helmet off, he once told his players. We're looking for smart football players, not dumb ones. And who could ever leave out the following gem from his time as WSU head coach concerning dating advice, aimed at young men on the Blues trying to find that most special girl? First, take her to CD's Pit House Barbecue in Moscow. If she will get her hands dirty with some great BBQ, you will know you're on the right track. And so we like labels, but there is a place where labels are not just inappropriate, but ineffectual. to the point of hands up, palms out, discombobulated befuddlement. Labels are bad when it comes to Catholicism. And label Catholics, those of us who celebrate being labeled a blank Catholic, are losers and should be publicly called out. I hope when they order ice cream in the summer, the scoops on their cone fall off of the pavement before they can eat them. There is no such thing as a liberal, conservative, modern, traditionalist, pre or post Vatican II, black, white, social justice, environmental, Asian, American, European, African Catholic. Now, okay, there is a based and red pilled 3% body fat, 700-pound deadlifting farmer and beekeeper Catholic. But let's save that for another time. You are either a Catholic or you are not a Catholic. You either accept the full measure of what Holy Mother Church proposes for our belief, and may God help you strive daily to live this out, or you do not. Label Catholics, don't be one. Don't be a label Catholic. Put honey and milk into your coffee in lieu of artificial sweetener, do. Be a label Catholic, don't. Hunt whale sharks from a helicopter with a spear, don't. But be a label Catholic, also no. High school scenario. You're a sophomore guy and kind of geeky and a bit lacking in self-confidence, like Mike Leach explained. But then out of the blue, a really pretty senior girl who's got a great personality and also volunteers at the local animal shelter where she fixes puppies' hurt paws, but really their hearts, asks you to go to the Fall Harvest Festival dance. Should you say yes? Yes, go with her. Also, now you're a legend. But then you find out she started a charity called Dates for the Needy. Nerds are people too. This complicates matters and probably deflates the balloon of your recently swollen ego substantially. Just don't be a label Catholic. That's what I'm getting at. So who are our targets? Rather, the stars of our show. In the order we'll discuss them: environmental Catholics, conservative Catholics, liberal Catholics, pre-Vatican II Catholics, Vatican II Catholics. 5 out of probably 50, if not 500 possibilities. We just don't have the time and the energy to cover them all. Also, boo, did I scare you? Sorry if I did. Also, I honestly hope the conspiracy theory where the government recruits a bunch of badgers and augments them robotically to become people smart and the size of a moose is not true. Environmental Catholics. For you, the book of Genesis and St. Francis of Assisi do not go far enough. To be a steward of the earth, responsibly using its resources and gifts, working for cleaner water and air for all, is not enough. Like all heresies and the labels that signify them, you must go to the extreme and without compromise. And so we can hear environmental Catholicism in articles like one by playwright Dorothy Fortenberry, entitled Latin Mass, Women Priests, Celibacy, Climate Change will make all the church's arguments pointless. Climate change, Ms. Fortenberry argues, is far and away the most important issue Catholics should be concerned with. She literally says, I will submit to you that climate change is the most important thing you could possibly care about. If you are concerned by dehumanized sexuality, you should be concerned about climate change. If the pace of modern life feels frenetic, the tone of discussion feels unforgiving and opportunistic, you should be concerned about climate change. I have my opinions about the Latin Mass, clerical celibacy, women priests, gay marriage, but these don't matter because climate change is going to render all these arguments preposterous. No, Dorothy, sorry. I have a feeling you're not in Kansas anymore when it comes to rational argument. So following what you said, the next time I flip off someone in traffic, that tone of discussion you mentioned, I can just blame climate change. I can blame climate change for all the gross sexualization of our culture that's been rotting away the core of our common morality for decades now. Like, well, my promiscuous friend who hooked up with everyone in college and left a sorry trail of broken hearts in his wake, it's not really his fault. Climate change made him do it. And so when over the next century, the planet heats up a few degrees, we're supposed to take seriously the proposition. The church is going to say something like, clerical celibacy used to be X, Y, and Z, but nothing changes theology like the weather. So I guess we got to throw everything out the window. It's absurd. It's label Catholicism. Even if the average daily temperature is 150 degrees and you melt if you step outside and there's no fresh water left and so on and so forth, this earth is not your true and final destination. You are going to die, and you must, above all, seek salvation, heaven. Therefore, maybe the dire circumstances Fortenberry describes would actually make the questions she claims will become irrelevant more relevant, as your chances of dying sooner and standing before God will have exponentially increased. You've got to have your soul all the more in order and quicker too. I'm all about taking care of the earth and loving our planet so as to leave it beautiful for future generations, but never at the expense of what our Lord has commanded. Seek first the kingdom of God. Perhaps most gross of all is the near adulation environmental Catholics heap on Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg. Jesuit priest Father Thomas Rees, in an article entitled Greta Thunberg, a Prophet for Advent, asks, as a member of the boomer generation, which obviously begs the knee-jerk meme reaction, okay, boomer, as a member of the boomer generation, I wonder, are we stupid or are we evil? Future generations will have to live in the world we ruined. Claiming that Greta Thunberg is an Advent prophet giving us hope but challenging us to prepare the way of the Lord, Father Rees cites the following Thunberg quote in support of his claim, the hope that she gives. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. And then I want you to act. I want you to behave like our house is on fire, because it is. Nothing signals the coming Christmas season quite like that. So too, another Thunberg quote from the same article, where if you listen closely enough, you can almost hear children laughing while they sled and skate on frozen ponds under the soothing melodies of Christmas carols. You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. How dare you? No, sorry, Greta. I'm pretty sure it was you or your parents or your team, whoever that is, that made the decision for you to stop attending school. You know, like normal kids, school where dreams are born and childhood is lived in large measure, to strike for the climate and subsequently receive international media and monetary support. So you could travel the world doing your best 62-year-old librarian scolding Johnny and his friends for talking too loud impression. Definitely no contradiction in being against carbon emissions, yet having an enormous personal carbon footprint from all that flying around the globe. And try telling some poor kid in Africa or the Middle East whose childhood and dreams were actually stolen by war and famine, that you who crisscross the continents like a movie star, a prophet, are the victim here. But fear not, this does not stop even non-Catholics from trafficking in environmental Catholicism when it comes to Thunberg. You see, even despite all of the previous information, all the contradictions and head scratchers, Thunberg being a prophet of climate change means that facts or logic doesn't matter. I really think that President Biden said it best when he explained, we choose truth over facts. And the truth here, like former Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams made known, is that God has raised up a prophet in Greta Thunberg in a way that no one could predict. She has said things no one else could have said. And just know that if you object to environmental Catholicism from, let's say, a traditional base, meaning simply Catholicism is what Catholicism is, and we cannot allow any issue, no matter how important, to supersede the ultimate meaning of the faith, that it is about the death and resurrection of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, about salvation. Be prepared for pushback from environmental Catholics. A Twitter user named Dinah Climate Change Voter, with a blue planet emoji following her handle, will happily let you know that, quote, traditional Catholic on Twitter is code for white supremacists. I think it may be the same in the Supreme Court. Conservative Catholics, maybe I should call you Trump Catholics. Now look, I understand, trust me, we all have our heroes, and society needs people to look up to and serve as role models. Who hasn't read Therese of Lisieux's The Story of a Soul and tried to live her little way, doing even the smallest tasks with extraordinary love? Who hasn't encountered Pier Giorgio Frassati and thought, I, a young person in the world, would love to sanctify my little circle of influence as he did? And who hasn't looked at the example of Donald Trump, from his insatiable lust for money, his quotes on women, about women's body parts, the gold toilets in Trump Tower, and his heartwarming comments about Christians? Can you believe that bullshit Trump said following a laying on the hands prayer session with evangelicals? Can you believe people believe this bullshit and not thought, that's the guy? That's the Christian candidate I've been waiting for all my life. Christ tells us to welcome the foreigner and the downtrodden, and that the way we treat the less fortunate will be held up as the metric of how we treated him. Trump, whose father taught him that life is a Darwinian contest between killers and losers, on border security. Now, before I give you the quote, let me say that I am all in favor of border security, that I support a country's border, and we certainly cannot, in the vein of some misappropriated perversion of charity, go full open borders and invite whoever into the country. That too is not Christian. For an authentically Christian view on immigration is not just about welcoming the stranger, it is, but also about striving to protect the safety and security of a nation's citizens. This including not undercutting the livelihoods of those people by forcibly importing a cheap labor force you intend to exploit. All that being true, I want to present you with a Trump anecdote and ask you to compare it to, for example, Christ's words in Matthew 25. I was hungry and gave me food. I was thirsty and gave me drink, a stranger and you welcomed me, naked and you clothed me. And ask yourself, does this sound like the words of a truly Christian politician? Privately, the president had often talked about fortifying a border wall with a water-filled trench, stocked with snakes or alligators, prompting aides to seek a cost estimate. He wanted the wall electrified, with spikes on top that could pierce human flesh, and publicly suggested soldiers shoot migrants if they threw rocks. But he backed off when his staff told him that was illegal. But later in a meeting, an aide recalled, he suggested they shoot migrants only in the legs to slow them down. That's not allowed either, they told him. I respect if you support Trump, maybe you voted for Trump because of his defense of life. A position which, irrespective of whether it's heartfelt or not, meaning if he actually believes it or not, and with that I cannot say, obviously, only God can judge that, something that has been truly Catholic. Donald Trump's presidential pro-life record and his appointment of pro-life judges is commendable. But if you are a label Catholic, conservative termed Trump Catholic, who views Trump as a fully and authentically Christian politician, I would have to object. If you can't tell if a candidate is sincere in their faith or just using it opportunistically to garner support and votes, which is probably the literal definition of what it means to be a politician, say or do whatever gets you elected, there's a good chance it's that if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck paradigm. I leave conservative / Trump label Catholics with a personal anecdote from my in-laws' kitchen in Nampa, Idaho. We, my in-laws, my wife, and myself were gathered there after Mass talking to two guests, parishioners and daily Mass goers too, the women of this two-guest couple very much into Trump Catholicism. After going on and on about all the wonderful things Trump was doing for Catholics and for his restoration of quote American values, she said, and I forget what term she used precisely, that Trump was either a new King David or the successor to King David. It was at that moment that I was like, all right, I'm going to leave now. Liberal Catholics. I think I've already given them enough ink in the earlier environmental section, but I'll say briefly that the problem with liberal label Catholics, as I see it, is that like the environmental label Catholics, they take their favorite pet issue and raise it not just above all others, but above the faith itself. It's probably too simplistic as comparisons go, but I think label Catholics on the right are susceptible to error by way of cult of personality, elevating people like Trump or maybe a media personality like Michael Voris. I am a churchmilitant.com label Catholic. Or just look at the breakaway SSPX named in honor of a guy who's truly an absolute boss Pope, Pope St. Pius X, but whose memory has been muddied and scuffed up by his association with this right-wing anti-Vatican II label Catholicism. Label Catholics on the right gravitate towards exaggerating a person. Label liberal Catholics of the left exaggerate and so obsess upon singular issues. Priestly celibacy, feminism in the church, racism / anti-racism. And we see much of this, upholding certain highly selective issues as preeminently important. In the general outlook, see favorable coverage of arguably the most famous Catholic in America today, President Joe Biden. I'll say the following about Biden, and all of it is sincere. It's cool that we have a Catholic president. Biden does seem like a reasonably nice guy, someone you want to have a beer with, talk to. It's awesome that he attends Mass and carries a rosary in his pocket. It's also true that it's absolutely scandalous and embarrassing how frequently his public positions and actions, most especially on abortion, fly in direct opposition to the Catholic faith he claims to practice devoutly and insists formed his thinking. When Mario Cuomo invented the "I'm personally opposed but" doublespeak in 1984 at Notre Dame, perhaps the year most appropriate owing to the term's fundamentally Orwellian sly dishonesty, it was BS. It is still BS today. Would any politician say, I'm personally opposed to slavery, but I'm going to do all I can to vote for laws that enshrine it, don't want to be imposing my Catholic beliefs on others? But this is exactly where Biden et al. Stand on abortion. It's just another variant of label Catholicism, meaning it's not Catholicism. But these liberal label Catholics fall over themselves, making excuses for Biden, arguing that because we see him at Mass and he carries a rosary, the pertinent questions, of course, are, does he pray the rosary? Is he in a state of grace to receive the Holy Eucharist at Mass? God alone can judge. And most especially that he supports their own personal label Catholic issue, all is forgiven. For some of these liberal label Catholics, it is not love, sorry, St. Paul, but support for the UN Sustainable Development Goals that covers a multitude of sins and serves as evidence that these Catholic politicians are in fact devout Catholics. I'll direct you to a recent article by journalist Michael Sean Winters, author of the book Left at the Altar, How the Democrats Lost the Catholics and How the Catholics Can Save the Democrats, entitled, in 2021, it became obvious the US bishops and the Pope are singing from different hymnals. This piece appeared in the National Catholic Reporter, a journal subtitled The Independent News Source, but that is, as far as I can tell, further to the left than Bernie Sanders in Moscow, Russia being gifted a first edition of Marxist Das Kapital by AOC, while Fidel Castro sings the Internationale a cappella. A photographic negative of the National Catholic Reporter would be a periodical entitled Donald Trump, Catholic Patriot, King David, Bald Eagle, Catholic, Build That Wall magazine, the independent news source. I'm going to read to you a few citations from Winters' article to illustrate the points I made above and earlier concerning President Biden. Bemoaning that his magazine had named LA Archbishop Jose Gomez as Catholic Newsmaker of the Year, Winters complains of the Bishops' Conference's catastrophically narrow focus on President Joe Biden's support for legal abortion. The bishops should instead promote Biden articulating the importance Catholic social teaching has had on his political views. In other news, it's too bad that when you put a block of ice into a hot tub, the hot water melts ice. Instead, we should talk about how ice has argued that hot water makes it even harder and more solidly frozen. The drawn-out squabble, as Winters frames the bishops' meeting, showed a conference torn between the lousy theology of the culture warriors, who think Biden and other pro-choice politicians should be denied communion, and the otherwise universal practice of the church that distinguishes between lawmaking about an evil action and the performance of the evil action itself. Oh, got it. So Catholic politicians can support any law, no matter how evil, no matter that the support will lead to real evils in the real world, so long as they claim they don't actually, support it. And here I have to agree with Winters. I bet if I walked up to someone and punched them in the face, they'd be upset. But if I told them first I'm personally opposed to violence and then punched them in the face, we'd be good. No harm, no foul. And the second punch, post personal objections, wouldn't even hurt because it's the thought that counts. Good intentions, as every grandmother will remind you, pave the road to heaven. Winters continues along this liberal label Catholic path throughout the article because, of course, anyone who likes, quote, anything on the right is displaying symptoms of schismatic tendency. It's good Pope Francis issued Traditionis Custodes because the ideological movement had abused the concessions that it had been granted. Winters doesn't specify what these abuses were or are, so I'll have to do some guesswork. 1970s style architecture in moan wine folk hymns paired with parishioners wearing basketball shorts or some hardly dressed at all is good. But liking Gothic cathedrals and Gregorian chant and the use of a common language that actually unified all Catholics around the world is bad and abuse. Okay, maybe he doesn't specify because the only thing suffering abuse here is the ego of liberal label Catholics who don't understand why no one likes their music and hand-holding and greet the person next to you before Mass for 40 minutes, in comparison to so much richness in the tradition writ large, stretching back over millennia. Winters mentions the removal of Cardinal Robert Sarah, in my opinion, the greatest churchman alive today, from his position as prefect of the Congregation for Divine Worship and the Sacraments, as if that was a good thing. But maybe it's all as nonsensical as the following two tweets lay bare. Responding to a man claiming, I was once called a white nationalist because I supported a more traditional church. The irony is I'm a light brown-skinned Mexican American. Another Twitter user wrote, future headline, Cardinal Sarah becomes the first white supremacist pope. I have a feeling that Cardinal Sarah being a black man from Africa would matter little to nothing to some liberal label Catholics who, drowning in the swamp of identity politics, would no doubt wholeheartedly and without second thought endorse such a characterization. On the final two categories, pre-Vatican II label Catholics and post-Vatican II label Catholics. Two that I'm going to combine into one, I'm going to say the least. Both are so annoying, period. Both make a label out of Vatican II. Instead of properly esteeming it without overdoing it, they go overboard. They go full overkill into buzzkill, as much as if the guy who arrived back from a joyride on your motorcycle not only fails to park it in the designated spot, but accelerates over the curb and then really kicks it into high gear, going full speed catapult like airborne over the rim of the Grand Canyon, and then down and down and down. All the while you're just standing there puzzled, like, why did he just not park and dismount? And now our whole vacation is ruined too. These people Pre and post Vatican II label Catholics, why don't they park and dismount, meaning shut up already? They act like Vatican II is the only council in church history, like it's the most important event in church history. The pre-Vatican II label Catholics seeing in it everything wrong, corrupt, and conspiratorial. The post-Vatican II label Catholics seeing in it the birth of a new church or some kind of nonsense like that, while simultaneously regarding everything that happened before the 1960s as bad or useless or irrelevant. Both of these label Catholics need to stop because all label Catholics need to stop. Label Catholicism, it's bad. I hope you've gotten at least that by this point in the talk. And I can't think of any better way to sum up the label Catholicism in this last pre and post Vatican II category than by an interview I recently watched with a famous Catholic internet personality who will remain anonymous because the story is so embarrassing. He referred to himself, this guy who specializes in the pre and post Vatican II label Catholic debate, as, quote, the bad boy of Catholicism. The host almost lost it, almost died of laughter on the spot, but somehow kept it together. I almost called a hospital to report severe injuries to my cringe muscles. See, don't be a label Catholic. It has substance abuse-like negative effects on your brain and common sense. One of the worst symptoms being non-sarcastically labeling yourself a Catholic bad boy. Now, in the etiquette of a proper roast, allow me to say something nice about the various personalities covered so far. From the accomplished playwright Dorothy Fortenberry to Father Reese, plus Trump and Biden, even Greta, be assured I wish for them what I wish for all and myself, happiness, well-being now and forever. I respect them sincerely, even if I wish to criticize their ideas. And I surely could find myself on the poked end of critical appraisal. Just because I'm insanely good looking, super intelligent, and above all, very modest, doesn't mean I'm above criticism. So I'm now taking you through a few labels. You've seen both the overreach and the deficiency, but you might rightfully ask, what does a non-label Catholic, just Catholic look like? What are his beliefs and general way of being? There happens to be such a person in our midst, in our town, in fact, and he works at the Moscow Co-op. R. Bipples, J. Paint Portfolio. Is he originally from Atlantic, Cass County, Iowa, and the aforementioned based and red-pilled 3% body fat, 700-pound deadlifting farmer and beekeeper Catholic? You already know. But so why is he working at the co-op? He's a farmer / beekeeper. Wait, farmer and beekeeper, and he cares about wearing masks? To all that I'll say, maybe if you spent more time minding your own business and reading and working out, you'd be even half the physical, intellectual, and philosophical specimen he is. And that would be really something, let me tell you. It's not too late to add a New Year's resolution. Paint Portfolio is a just Catholic. He hates labels so much, he hires people to remove them from his clothing. He also hires people to photograph him and post the photos on Instagram. And he hires other people to buy bots to make it look like he has way more followers than he really does. I didn't say he was perfect. He has 2.6 million followers on Instagram. He's a just Catholic because while caring about the environment, he doesn't worship it. He worships God. He hates the political left and right with equal fervor. They suck, all of them. And knowing this, he knows he can and will turn to the men and women of his faith for advice and inspiration, but to politicians for comedy alone. He accepts Vatican II like he accepts all the church councils, like he accepts everything the church founded by Jesus Christ tells him to accept, likewise rejecting what the church rejects. He's just a Catholic, do you understand? And so he doesn't think it's anything special that he believes life begins at conception, or that marriage and the family are society's essential building blocks, or that true love is both the emotional response and the conformity with the truth, and always at the same time, because why is common sense supposed to be special? And it's kind of like this with everything for this label-less Catholic, kind of like St. Augustine's motto to love God and then do whatever you want, which I'll add to in the light of Paint Portfolio and all those striving to be like him. Just be a Catholic, live the Catholic faith in its fullness, but without additions, subtractions, exaggerations, and then just do whatever you want. Thank you.